Hello everyone. Hello everyone. So, this is the first stream of the Malazan read along slash book club. And so, basically, what we're going to be doing today is going through the book, the first part that we scheduled to read. And we'll go ahead and talk about that, summarize it, have a chat about that, talk about theories and everything else. Hopefully, the stream is running well for you guys there. I have my chat here up on my phone, so hopefully I can get to everyone whenever that pops up. But I figure we're just gonna take it chapter by chapter, talk about theories and things and all the questions and ideas that come up when it comes to Malazan or Malazan, whichever you guys prefer me to pronounce it. Just let me know. To start off, I just wanted to read the quick intro for the book, and then we'll go ahead and get going from there. So, now these ashes have grown cold. We open the old book. These oil-stained pages recount the tales of the fallen. A frayed empire, words without warmth. The hearth has ebbed, its gleam and life's spark are but memories against dimming eyes. What cast my mind, what hue my thoughts as I open the book of the fallen, and breathe deep the scent of history. Listen then to these words, carried on that breath. These tales are the tales of us all. Again, yet again, we are history relived, and that is all. Without end, that is all. So yeah, good way to open it up. Sort of reminds me how the Wheel of Time would always open books with like the wind and talk about ages coming past. I don't know if it's gonna do that for every book, but I still like the intro. And then I like the poems he puts at the beginning of each chapter. So we have the prologue for the first one. Uh, I'm still trying to grasp like the time frame and the wars and the whole conflict going on. I know it's like a bigger thing, so it's not the easiest, most understandable thing to understand right away. Uh, but basically, before the prologue, we get like a little poem or excerpt from Call to Shadow by Felicine. And it says, the emperor is dead, so too his right hand, now cold, now severed. But mark these dying shadows, twinned and flowing blood and beaten, down and away from mortal sight, from scepters rule, dismissed, from guild, candelabra, and the light now fled, from a hearth ringed in hard jewels 7 years this warmth has bled. The emperor's dead. So too his mastered companion, the rope cut clean. But mark this burgeoning return, faltering dark, the tethered shroud, embracing children in empire's dying light. Here now the dirge fate reprised. Before the sun's fall, this day spills red on buckled earth and in obsidian eyes. Vengeance chimes 7 times. Okay, so it is just for the first book, the intro. Got it. No prologue in the last book as well. From what I understand, they set it up. The emperor is dying, and think the power is shifting in the empire or the Malazan Empire. Um, and basically, we start in year 1154 of the Burned Sleep, and then 96th year of the Malazan Empire. And this is also the last year of the Emperor Kellanved's reign. I did read the intro to the like or the author's notes that the author Stephen Erickson put in the beginning, where he like mentioned that the book Gardens of the Moon is actually like in the middle of the whole series, and so it's not like the beginning point of the Empire per se. Because I know the prologue, it seems like it is at least the point where Lysine takes over, but I know this is like in the middle, so we're gonna have other future books that flashback. 1 second here. Also, if you hear background noise, I apologize. I live in a house with a bunch of other people that are morning people, so they're up. Um, but let me see here. So yeah, basically, the way the prologue starts out, we get introduced to one of our, I guess, main characters, and that would be Perrin Ganoz. And essentially, he is just like overwatching a city that's burning or rioting, and like watching the destruction go on. And I enjoyed the prologue. It was a little like hard to understand right away just because it is just throwing you right in the action and you don't know what exactly is what. So it was like tough to figure out what's going on at first, but I feel like I somewhat grasped. And so we start in like Malaz City at Mox Vein and everything, and he's like overlooking the mouse quarter. Yeah, so um, let me see. One thing I wanted to point out was the prose. I noticed the prose started out very strong in Gardens of the Moon, and then like it didn't get bad, but it like went the level like went a little lower compared to at least the first few chapters, because some of the prose in the first few chapters was really good. So like even the intro, like the way he describes things. So he's like the stains of rust seem to map blood seas on the black pock surface of Mock's vein. It's I really like how he describes his like settings. That's one of the things I have here. I wrote down a few quotes in my notebook while I was reading for that. So like one of my favorite quotes from the prologue was actually a piece of dialogue. It was between I believe it was Dujek. Let me just double check. It was between Perrin and someone else. It's towards the end of the prologue. Or I guess they didn't name him at first. They just had Gnos and the other soldier they didn't really name. But we know he's a bridge burner, so it might. I believe it was Whiskey Jack. You guys can correct me on that. Um, at the time, but he was telling Perrin. He said, "Every decision you make can change the world. The best life is the one the gods don't notice. You want to live free, boy. Live quietly." And so I really like that quote that he had in the beginning. It's just like a warning, sorta. And even like the mentioning of the gods, I didn't realize how prevalent the gods were until you get further in the book when you see them like summoning from all their warrens and everything, and you see there's like a whole list of gods in the book back here. Um, and basically, from what I understand with the warrens, I'm probably wrong. I think it's like they're sort of like portals, but like not always. So it's like a portal or a gateway to different universes controlled by the gods, is from what I understood. And then the gods feed into that portal, or they give the person opening it power if they want to, and they can channel the power through the portal with the gods. That's sort of what I got from it, but I could be totally off. Yeah, the pros I agree with that, Daniel. And that's good to hear as well that the prose improves, because when he like really shows his prose, it gets really good. And I know the prose isn't as like up to par for book one, just because like it was supposed to be a movie and it was like coming off a script that they had. They had the whole universe planned out. That's why the history is like insane in this universe. Like it's kind of hard to uh, compartmentalize the history, and but like as far as the pros, there's some really good like spots that he has with the pros when he goes to like describing areas and certain environments. But I noticed like the beginning of chapter one was really strong, and then it kind of teetered off, but then like later in the book like the pros came back up, so it's slightly inconsistent, but I can see that consistency building as he gets more practice, and it isn't like a script that they're adapting, since they went from script to book for book one. And also he's not like a rookie per se anymore. He's fully, oops, sorry, he's fully ready to go ahead and do the book. Not all are owned by gods. You're already introduced to the Imperial Warren. That is true. I didn't. Yeah, I think I noticed that as well. And there's like some that they use just for like transportation with that one guy later in the first book that we read, or sub book, where I believe it was his name was Tipper. It was the one that was with Perrin. He was transporting him like through a warren, and they were like walking through it. I don't know if that one's controlled by gods, but that's sort of like what I was getting with the vibe of it. But overall, yeah, we see like we basically learn in the prologue Lacine's taking over as the emperor, basically, or empress. We get introduced to a few things. So we have like the Napon, which I guess is a language or ethnicity, and then the yeah, it's a ethnicity as well. So they have like blue skin, I guess, is the way they described it. I don't know if that's all of them or just some of them. And then we have like we get introduced to a few different like factions. So we have the Claws, who I guess are like acolytes of a cult, or they're like the assassins for the Empress. Further in, it basically sounds like a cult that works with Lysine and they do assassinations and other things. Topper, yeah, that's who it was. Topper was the Clawmaster. Yeah, you're totally right. I said Tipper. I know it's Topper. I have all my stuff like written down chronologically, like on the chapter, so I don't have his name pulled up yet in the first for the first book or chapter. But yeah, you're right. Um, but yeah, that's basically it that happens. We just it just sets up like everything for the outcome of this book going forward because we do have a time jump afterwards, which we might as well get to the first chapter, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was like probably the strongest chapter out of the sub book was at least the beginning of chapter one. And then maybe like there's a few other parts and other chapters that have strong moments as well. But I really like the intro and like the mystery and intrigue that it brought. So we start out in the 1161st year of Burn's sleep, the 103rd year of the Malazan Empire, and then the 7th year of Empress Lysine's rule. So, like I said before, Lysine is taking over. She's already been there for 7 years. Um, and so basically, the what happens in this chapter, I have a little summary written down. So we basically get introduced to the old lady, and I believe her name is Riga. Uh, and she basically is just like complaining about the Empire the whole time, and she's pissed off. She's like, "All my kids are dead. I hate all of them. I want to kill them all." And she passes her soul to the fish girl, uh, and we learn the fish girl's name. I believe is Sari. From that, because we see her later, and they refer to her as Sari. I'm assuming it's still her, but she passes the soul to the fish girl when she's dying because the soldier like slapped her like straight up on the head. And basically after that happens, she like does like a little chant in or she does like a little prediction or chant in the girl's ear. So what did she say? Oh yeah, she said, "Look to the Lord spawned in darkness. His is the hand that shall free you through. He'll know it not." So she gave her like some weird prophecy basically before she transferred her soul, took over her body. I don't know exactly the technical term. It ends with Gano saying he smelled the burnt pig when he can infer from Whiskey Jack's reaction. Yeah, I forgot to mention that, but yeah, that was pretty crazy as well, and it shows you how dark um, it basically is with that prologue. So like, I'm gonna pull it up because I know which part you're talking about. Yeah, hot smoke rolled over the wall, engulfing them. A reek of burning cloth, scorched paint and stone, and now something sweet. And abattoirs caught fire. Gano said, "Pigs." The commander grimaced. After a long moment, he sighed and he leaned back down on the Merlin. "As you say, boy. As you say." Yeah. Basically, it's setting up also with that Perrin is like totally out of his wits. He's not ready to be a soldier, even though he wants to be. And like he doesn't even know the smell of like dying humans. He thinks it's pigs burning when it's really humans. And like the commander's just like, you're in over your head, bro." um, and we'll see that more with Perrin. He definitely shows his like I guess privilege. Since he's a noble, he doesn't understand things, and that comes up definitely later as well. But yeah, the chapter one after so we basically get Riga, who took over the fish girl's body after dying, gave her that like weird prophecy, um, and then from there she basically the two men show up that are like shadowed figures. This was like really intense when this first happened. It was really cool too, and they have like the hounds or shadow hounds, whatever they want to call them, that are following them and like killing all the soldiers. They show up to the fish girl and they're like debating whether they should save her or not, or kill her since they already like revealed their names to her. And we got the names. It was Amanus and Coteleon. Let me just pull it up, make sure I'm saying it correctly. But yeah, I believe it was Amanus and Coteleon. Uh, but yeah, they're pretty crazy, and we learn later in the book that they're basically from the Shadow Warren, or the Shadow Gate. And from what I understand, that gate or the shadow, keep wanting to say Shadow Realm, like it's like Yu-Gi-Oh or something, where they're banishing them Shadow Realm. But the like the Shadow Gate, it hasn't been used in like a super long time until I guess when Lysine was taking over, and they like somehow reopened it. Um, we'll see later. And basically, let's see. But yeah, basically they show up, Amonis and Cotilian, and they murder every single soldier there. There's no one left alive at all, and everyone's just like shocked. And it sets up the shadowed figures, and it sets up Sorry, as we see that they even say her eyes look like they're way older than her body, because Riga went inside of Sorry and is basically on like a revenge tour, I guess. She just wants to murder like the whole empire as it is. Uh let's see. Yeah, I'm on his Kotalin. And then it ends with their part. Oh, hello, welcome in, Mr. Dad. Shadow Warren? Okay. Okay, Shadow Warren. Got it. Remember to say Shadow Warren specifically with that. Thank you for that, Daniel. Um, I like how it ends their section though with how it began. So, like for example, with the prod and pull, the fisher girl says, um, and it started the chapter that way as well. So it's like prod and pull. The old woman was saying, "'Tis the way of the empress, as like gods themselves." And then at the end, just like she was referring to when she took over the official girl, like it shows that Riga is in her body now, where after it's like it's not so bad a thing last to be the pawn of a god, prod and pull. So it's tying it back in. So I really liked how he did that with the writing. And overall, like this first chapter is really good. Basically, like he gets introduced to Lauren, the adjunct, and a few other people, and he basically is talking about like what he saw and witnessed and everything that's going on, how everyone's dying and there was no one there, and it looks like the bodies have been ripped apart, and they're trying to figure out like what exactly it is. And the adjunct has like a they what's it called? The adjunct knows that there's some type of like sorcery or magic going on. It's not like normal people, which is why she sent Perrin to like this little village to like investigate what's going on. Uh, and we see that too. Perrin goes to the village, and it's just full of like bloated bodies, dead corpses, and everything's rotting. And he's trying to get like a clue of like what's happening, and he basically can't. He just sees like crows and dead bodies, and he's like, "This is pretty creepy. I don't know know what's going on here, and it's not very safe, as you can tell." And from that point, when he's like going to leave the village, that's where we get introduced to Topper, who we learn works for the adjunct, and he's also part of the claw. Um, and basically, this is where we get introduced to our first Warren, at least explicitly introduced, because obviously the Warrens are used with the Shadow Warren when they have Kotalin and Amonis. But he opens a Warren, and he basically transports them, but like it's not normal transportation like a teleport. They have to like go in it and like walk through and um like go to the area that they were going to. Um let's see. So they basically get to know each other. They have a drink, they leave. They arrive and they meet the adjunct. They're trying to meet back up with the adjunct, and Perrin gets introduced to Lysine, who he saw in the prologue, and they have like a weird exchange where he's like he basically kind of like talks back to the Empress, and she like laughs about it, and then everyone else is like freaked out. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna die, like don't ever do that again, that's so dangerous," and everything. And he's just so entitled. He doesn't understand that like doing certain things could get him killed. Like even when he's talking to the adjunct, he Um, he basically is like, yeah, I'm gonna be a soldier, blah blah blah. I'm gonna be a commander, and she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna use you now. You're mine. I'll help you get to the top or whatever. Like she's obviously manipulating him, and she's like, you're gonna do what I want you to do now. You're gonna be part of my team. And so yeah, it's like an automatic spot with the adjunct in the city, and so he gets promoted. But at the same time, it's not really a promotion necessarily because now he's actually in harm's way. But still doesn't understand that. Um, so he's kind of just like that noble fool at the moment. So yeah, he meets with Lysine, and then basically and gives her like the report of everything that's going on. Um, and then she officially promotes him, puts him on the investigation, and then assigns him to get trained. And basically, after that point, he goes back home for the first time and talks to his sister. At the end of the chapter, we learn like his sister is the one in charge of like the finances and everything in the house because that was supposed to be his job, but he decided to be a soldier instead of actually like being a wine merchant like the rest of his noble family. Uh, and so that's basically how it goes with that. With chapter one, for the most part, I enjoyed the chapter. It was a good introduction. The thing that really got me tied into it once more is with the Shadow Warren and Cotelin and Amonis, like the mystery behind it. How strong are these people? Who are these people? What's their goal? Like all the questions that brought up with them are what got me like hooked right away. And the idea of Sari and Riga. Oh yeah, and then additionally with chapter one, we also see Sari go to the army and basically get recruited into the essentially the bridge burners. And when they see her, she's just like all bloodied and messed up. And they're like, "Who the heck is this like little girl? She looks like insane." But they still take her anyways because I guess the army needs bodies. And so she joins that way and she gets in there, and that's where we get her name as well, where she just says like her name's Sari because Kotlin and Amonis, I guess they take her in as a slave and they own her now, I guess, and uh, they basically have to rename her and choose a name for her instead of killing her. But yeah, that's chapter one, and we basically go from there, and we have another little like time skip. I believe it's 2 years. Um, and yeah, 2 years later, so it goes to the 1163rd year of Burns' sleep, and then the 100 other main players in the game. And this is where like the intrigue and everything starts to build up more with all the people that we're getting introduced to. So we have like Hairlock, who's like the male wizard, and then we have Tattersell, who I guess is the second protagonist or point of view we usually take. It's either usually Tattersell or Perrin. They're like the main two at the moment. And so basically, I was a little confused with the timing of it all, but it seemed like we have the battle with Moonspawn happening at the beginning of the chapter, and then we cut to a flashback before the battle because, like in the beginning, there's like everyone dying. Like Hairlock is like on his last like breath, he's gonna die, and then the bridge burners show up to save him basically and heal him, and we get introduced to like Whiskey Jack, Quick Ben, uh, and then they help revive Hairlock. We learn later like what actually happens with him doing like uh, a soul transfer to a marionette. That's yeah. Again, Bacchus campaign has been going on for a while, so they take pretty much anyone. Yeah, that's how it seems. The fact that they're wanting to take like a 12-year-old or 14-year-old girl, however old Sari is, and like introduce her into the army. So they're pretty desperate, I guess, to do that. Because it's like at that point she's just fodder. And even with like the battle we see later, like are the humans even necessary for this war? Because like with the way the sorcerers and everyone fight, they just use them as fodder basically. And I guess if they don't want to fight with magic, that's like what their job is for. But they're basically just like there to get murdered, as we see with the beginning of the Hounds, like 1,400 soldiers or get murdered from the Hounds like instantly. So they're basically useless if you're a human in this like world and you can't use magic. But yeah, going back to that, we basically see the battle when they're trying to attack Moonspawn, and it cuts back and then goes to where Tattersell wakes up and she's with Calot, which I guess isn't her boyfriend, but is just her like lover that sleeps with her. And he's also, we learn, 100 years old uh, as well. So that also sets up people can live for more than normal human expectancy. And then we also get introduced to like Dujek, High Mage Teshrin. They all meet up for like as a group and they're planning basically an attack on the Moon Lord, which is the Animander Rake. I feel like that's a common name for people that are going into the series. It's one of the names I always heard was Animander Rake. So I was excited to see him, knowing that it's someone we fight in the first book. That's interesting because I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say these people are good people since they're working for the Empire. So it's not like we're the good guys. Like Moonspawn could be the good guys. We don't know yet, at least as far as my aspect of things. Uh, Let me just check back in. The structure of Gardens Moon is very much one of the consequences of being a screenplay originally. Yeah, that makes sense as well with the way they do the with it being a screenplay, the way they flash back. So they basically go from the death of Hairlock or the death of Hairlock and Tattersall, the aftermath, and they cut back to see what's happening. So you can see like how it would be a movie. This is be an insane screenplay with how long it is. They would have to break it up into multiple movies, but you can definitely see how it is a screenplay, which I don't mind. I've read a few screenplays, so it's not a problem with me for me, like formatting wise. And he does a really good job at describing his like areas and atmosphere, so it's not really hard to go along with. But yeah, basically the group is planning to attack the Moon Lords. We learn what the Andi Testi are. I guess it's like a race of people, but I think they're not normal humans at least. And we learn a little bit about Animander Rake, who isn't actually a Tisti Andi or Andi Tisti, and instead he is a human, but he's not of the Elder Blood. So that's the first mention we get of Elder Blood in this scenario, and so we basically that's just a little like intrigue or sprinkle at the moment. We don't know much about what Elder Blood is. Let's see. Yeah, so they basically plan to attack him. They're figuring out this thing. Tayshren's in charge of it, and Tattersall is still the main point of view. We then like go to the battlefield, and from there at the battlefield, we have a great like descriptions of everything going on with the Warrens and how they have like the way I was picturing it. It's like, oh, here's the Warren behind me, like opening up and using the powers, and then we have like Animander Rake shooting down with like his ravens and everything, and he's just destroying them. They weren't ready at all, and I guess they were supposed to get backup, but we learned that Tayshren basically shut down the support and what like let four sorcerers die essentially and almost kill Tattersall. Like Kalot dies, Hairlock gets chopped in half, and he should have died, but he does his soul transfer, and like a few other people die as well, and so it seemed as like it is pretty intense right away, and that's also why I was saying like it doesn't seem like human life really matters because um they just like murder all like the soldiers there. They're just there for fodder. Tistiandi are like dark elves. Okay. Animander is a Tistiandi. That's what I thought. I thought there was a moment where they mentioned him and they're like, "Oh, he is a human leading them." I was like, "Hmm." I probably misread it though. But that's good to know. Thank you for correcting me on that. Uh let's see. But yeah, they go through the battle. Rake basically destroys all of them and he lives up to his reputation. And like like I said, two other mages get killed, and basically all of that was because Tayshren wanted to attack, and he also cut off the support. So he was basically sabotaging them, and also wanting to kill the bridge burners at the same time. Because we learned like the bridge burners later, they're like the last remnants of the second army. At least Whiskey Jack is, and Whiskey Jack helped Lysine take over, but she doesn't really want them around anymore. So let's see. We also get like a sort of an explanation of Warren's on page 73. Let me just pull it up to read it real quick. Yeah, so it said, "The Warrens of Magic dwelt in the beyond. Find the gate and nudge it open a crack. What leaks out is yours to shape." With these words, a young woman set out on the path to sorcery. Open yourself to the warren that comes to you, that finds you, draws forth its power as much as your body and soul are capable of containing. But remember, when the body fails, the gate closes. So yeah, that little explanation, like I said, it sounds like warrens are like gateways where they encompass the power of the gods if the god wants to give them their power. Um, so that's sort of what I'm visualizing it as with that. We also like get some introduction to some of like the gods, for example. So we the characters are always saying like Hood in like their vernacular, and I guess Hood is the god of death, from what I picked up. So like it's a very rich world, and we like even know what's her name, Sail Tattersail. Hers is like Thrin, I believe. If I pull up the glossary, they have a list of the gods in there. Just gonna check it real quick. Okay, got it. Okay, so that's how they work. So anyone can use magic, but the one that they're capable of using is decided at birth. Got it. Okay, that's interesting. I wonder how that'll tie later into like the Shadow Warren and everything else in there, and how they handle that. Like when those people were chosen, if we'll get like a background, that'll be interesting to see. And basically, I can't find the list of the gods at the moment, but that's fine. Yeah, so we have like the different ones. So it's like Opon, and then there's Hood, and there's like I guess they're all different houses. So like High House Dark, High House Shadow, and all the different ones there. And so I believe Thrin is the one that Tattersall uses. And so later in the chapter, uh, we basically get the part where we see the marionette soul shift with Hairlock, and he basically takes over that body. So that was pretty funny. Uh, with that happening, one thing I noticed as well is the comedy is actually pretty like funny in Gardens of the Moon. You think I know it's not grimdark, but people usually describe uh Malazan as grimdark, but there's actually a lot of like comedy in between. Just like the fact that Hairlock is a marionette is like pretty like ridiculous but funny at the same time, but he's still like threatening her. He's like, I'll still beat you up. Like I'll still take care of you. You better watch out. But we learned like with Tatterso, like one of her main abilities with her gate is she can open it, or her warren, she can open it, and she does like a tarot card reading basically, where she like brings out a card, flips it over, and she can sort of understand it, and it's like decided by fate with the cards. So like when she's reading the card the for Hairlock, we see like the Warren of the God Knight of Darkness, and then Opon the Fool, and basically the God Knight of Darkness. I didn't quite understand what they wanted with that per se, but Opon the Fool, that was an interesting one that ties in later. Uh, Opon basically is like twins, male and female, and uh, we see like when she's doing it, she like stops the reading, and then like a coin starts spinning in her head, and she could like hear the coin throughout. Oh yeah, the Malazan Grim. Let me see. I see you, Mr. Dad. Yeah, I know. Like, I think Erickson says it's not grimdark because it's like full of hope or something. At least like when I saw like intro videos of people are like, why you should read it. I know it's like very like debated because I know a lot of people call it that, but I believe Erickson said it's not. So I'm not gonna say it is grimdark. It is very like dark and brutal, but I think it's just reality. Yeah, I think it's because he said there's like too much hope in the series, or it's about hope and things like that. From like an, I think it was an interview I was seeing with him or a snippet. Yeah, definitely not grim dark. It's just dark fantasy. Yeah, I agree. I think the problem with that is like people can't uh have it like people don't understand the difference between like grim dark and dark fantasy per se. They like when it's just dark fantasy, they think it is grim dark. So if you like take something like Berserk, for example, Berserk, I guess might be closer to Grimdark, but it's like close but not. I think the difference is like with the morals and the hopes and how like the universe takes things and what the overall theme is. If it's like a theme of like we can all get together and there's hope in the world, and I think that's where it shifts versus like Grimdark is more it's just the brutal reality of life kind of thing. Kaladin Brood who said you have no elder blood in chapter 2. Oh yeah, with the elder blood with when I mentioned Animander Rake. Yeah, he said something. I had to like find the page, but when he was describing Animander Rake, uh I believe he said he had no elder blood or something of that sort. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Whiskey Jack. Yeah, Grimdark's morally great character, certain sense of hopelessness. I definitely agree with that. Um, versus there is like I know like there's not like hopelessness necessarily in this world. I would say there is morally great characters, but I think hopelessness is like the main difference with that because like there's definitely great characters so far. I mean, like Hairlock's not a good guy, obviously, but he's not like fully bad. And I guess who's good and bad is just the perspective that you're in. If you're in the protagonist perspective, you think they're usually the good ones, versus if like Animander Rake, if I didn't know his name coming in, I'd probably think he's a bad guy. But who knows? He could be the good one, and the Empire could be bad. Like it's just the perspective you're in. But I think the hope is what makes it grimdark or not. Yeah, I can't find the part, but like, there was someone that like mentioned no elder blood. I probably got it mixed. Oh, here it is. Mane of Chaos, Animander Rake, Lord of the Blackskin, Tistiandi, who has looked down on 100,000 winters, who has tasted the blood of dragons, who leads the last of his kind, seated in the throne of sorrow, and a kingdom tragic and fey, a kingdom with no land to call its own. Let me see. Somewhere in there he mentioned something about it. Yeah. I'll take your word for it there, but yeah, I probably just misread it on that part. But definitely, I don't know. Animanoric's really interesting. I want to learn more about him. Hopefully, we get like a point of view from him eventually because he just seemed really cool with that. But that's basically it for chapter 2. We learn um, that Taishrin betrayed them in the battle. They got messed up for trying to attack Moonspawn, and let me know how Moonspawn is like described as. I always see that image when I look up like Google Images covers. You see the Book of the Fallen image and it has like a city floating in the sky. Is that Moonspawn? Because that's kind of like the way I was visualizing it. Is that like floating city in the sky was Moonspawn? So let me know if that's like what it is or not. But uh, the basically the overall imagery and everything is pretty cool with how they handle it. Everything happens, the battle goes on, a lot of people die, and we get back, and Sale does the reading, and basically Opon like comes in her mind with the coin, and it's like constantly spinning. It reminded me of Wheel of Time. Matt in the Wheel of Time has a dice that's constantly spinning in his head, but I'm pretty sure this is before that. This is 1999, I believe, and I don't think the dice showed up until like book 4 or 5 of Wheel of Time, so it's probably around a similar time. Um, but interesting concept. I like how that happened and how Perrin gets tied in with Opon as well, and he ends up getting the coin as well later. Yeah, like a floating city. That's pretty cool. It's not really something you see, at least in normal fantasy. Not normal fantasy, but you see a lot in fantasy. Oh, stream lagged for a second. Sorry about that. But yeah, we go to chapter 3 though. Basically, we start back up with Perrin, and he's on like on a boat in the sea, and he Topper shows up and basically briefs him with what's going on, what his mission is. He basically has to spy on the recruit, which we know is Sari, um, and he has to infiltrate the bridge burners for the adjunct. Let's see, Garden Moons was written like 1991 too, just got published in 99. That is a good point. You're right, because he was trying to sell it as like a script for a longest time, and they had their like whole universe set up, him and Esselmont. Um, so yeah, so it's not for anyway. So yeah, it's a good point with that. So no one can ever really say that like they copied that idea from Wheel of Time. They definitely didn't copy it from Wheel of Time either, because it's like slightly different. But yeah, so Perrin basically gets briefed by Topper about the his mission to spy on Sari, the recruit, and then we get the adjunct Lorne, who basically talks to the commander, and talks to Perrin, and basically is sending him to the Pale on these like flying things. They think they're called like quarrels. They have like translucent or transparent wings, and they're saying like, oh, you can like put your finger through it and like destroy the wings. So I guess they're like delicate creatures somewhat, but that's pretty interesting. I always like when fantasy series bring in like characters that aren't just normal animals, and they also like have their own bestiary. Because a lot of them will be like, well, they'll still use normal animals. They may have magic and different races and things, but the animals they keep the same sometimes. So it's always cool whenever you can see like different creatures show up. I always like that. That's one of my favorite parts. Is like bestiaries and like how they bring in like different environments and creatures and come up with those things. Yeah, Moranth quarrels. Hmm. Yeah, they're pretty cool. We also we learn a few things as well. They do like they said like Beludron, I think, is the high mage to the Empress when they were talking, but I don't. I believe Tayshrin is also like a high mage, so I don't know the exact structure. I guess I could check the Dramatis Personae. Let's see. Gnos, Dujek, Tayshrin, high mage to the Empress. Oh yeah, so there's more than one high mage. It looks like because it says Belladron and Tayshrin. I'd say only around half of the point of view characters in the series are human. There are a few high mages. Okay, yeah, that's what it looks like as well. A few high mages, and that's cool. I like the diversity of it and the different like cultures and races and species that they bring in. It's always more interesting than just normal humans. For that, because it's like, oh, we're just in another medieval world with like the normal humans, except they have a little like magic spritz with that. But yeah, basically, Lauren sends him off, and he's basically going to go try to join the bridge burner. Tattersell is she's leaving her tent, and she has to go meet with Tayshrin, but she doesn't want to like spend her time there. And we see Belladron from the battle, and he's like super messed up, and like his whole face is beat up, and I guess his like his spouse or something, Nightchill, died in the battle, and so he doesn't want to like heal his scars because he wants to remember her. But he is the opposite of Sale, though. He doesn't blame Tayshrin for the battle, uh, and he doesn't like want to get vengeance. Versus Sale wants to murder Tayshrin and wants to get as much revenge as possible. So we have like our two revenge characters, at least with Sari and Tayshrin, it looks like, and then a bunch of the bridge burners also don't like, or sorry, Sari and Tattersell, and then a bunch of the bridge burners also don't like Tayshrin, so they're kind of in there. The only one who's not really doing a revenge tour at the moment is Perrin. He, like I said, he's kind of just like the lackadaisical noble who's just going through life and he's just doing his own thing. Okay, there's a few high fists as well. Thank you for that, Daniel. Um, that actually helps because I hear like high fist a lot, and I'm like, oh, is it just one, two? So that's good to know. But yeah, so given leave Tatian to raise, yeah, you're right. He basically is allowed to raise a borrow for her. I guess that's like some sort of like ceremony or how they handle that exactly. I don't know. But whatever that is specifically, it's something with his like culture because he's like also like sort of a giant the way they describe him, at least he's like really big. Um, and so I don't. Let me see here. I'm just picking back up where I'm at. Yeah, so that's basically it for that specific little brief part. We also like get a confirmation that Sari is the new recruit. Uh, Basically, Whiskey Jack confirms that, and then it seems as though they have like a plan brewing with Hairlock, as we mentioned. They have some sort of like plan going on where they're gonna get revenge, take over. We don't know, or just like kill the Empress. We're not sure, or just Haitian. We'll find out later, obviously. And then Cell finally meets up with Taishan. She does another card reading for him. Here in the card reading, basically, we learned that um, there's something about a recruit in the card reading to take care of, and there's also like an assassin, as well as Opon seems to be worried for some reason when doing the card reading. Okay, the borrow is a burial mound. Got it. Okay. So I guess he respects Taishan because he let her at least like bury her and everything for that. But they all meet up, and yeah, Taishan's worried because they do the card reading, and um, basically there's an assassin coming for Taishan, which we know at this point because like everyone's coming after him. So it's not that much of like a cool thing. But one cool thing we see is like with the coin once more. When they mention sorry, the coin like wobbles because before it's like a constant spinning in her head, but it finally like wobbles at the mention of not sorry, but the recruit, which we know is sorry. Um, and so uh, basically, it was seen when they're looking down and they see Whiskey Jack, Quick Ben, Callum, and then Sorry enter the area, and that's when the coin spins. Sorry, not with the reading. Is when they see them like come in, and so it's interesting to see like Opon is like worried in a way, or when the coin spins, there's something going on with like the Shadow Realm because Opon is like they use. Uh, so we go from that, and then let me see. Let me just pick back up. I believe we cut back to Perrin again, and he is finally arriving. And basically, he and a claw member are taking like making their way back, and he just like gives some background story on Whiskey Jack, and he's saying how he was part of like the second, uh, and the second is like the group that help overturn. He's one of the last members. Him and Whiskey Jack, even though he's not part of it either. Okay, so the Virgin High House Death, Assassin High House Shadow, Orb Judgment, and True Sight. Opon, Lady So Good Luck, and Crown signifying Darajistan, and the cards pulled. Hmm. Yeah, she talks about it a bit. I didn't write it down because I didn't really understand it at the time. I think that was like just like me getting like overstimulation from everything going on. But she does talk about it, like you said. Um, and I think it's interesting the tarot readings. I'm gonna call it. It's not actual tarot readings, but that's what it reminds me of, is tarot readings in like real life. So, but I wonder if like everything she does is 100% guaranteed, or if it's just like a premonition, or like what could be if things don't change, kind of thing. Because the thing with a lot of like predictions and stuff like that is like there's like that factor of fate where is this going to happen no matter what, or is this like a situation where it's going to develop, or they have a chance to change it based on their actions, or the fact that they try to change it, it makes it happen, kind of thing. So it's always interesting to see what take they use when it comes. It's guaranteed. Okay, yeah, that makes sense because it's probably like the situation with the guaranteed like readings where it's like you try to change it and it's going to happen anyways, and it's because of those actions, so no matter what it's going to happen, but they don't, it's not or it's not obvious. It's like here's a card, this means this, and it could mean this, kind of thing, and it's up to interpretation. So that's good to know. But yeah, we basically, yeah, we get going back to Perrin. He's basically joining the crew. He's coming into the city, and um the guy's basically warning him. He's like, just stay alive. Like all their captains have died, basically. Uh, for the ninth, which is the bridge burners. It's like everyone dies, like as their captain. So just like try your best to stay alive. He's still like so oblivious. He thinks he has a chance, and he thinks he's gonna do something. And he has his like sword that he always keeps on him, but he never like uses. Got it. So in book one, they're a little simpler. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the way I view them as well, because it's like interesting. You never really know until it happens how it pays off. Like obviously we see like they're talking about a recruit and they're talking about an assassin. So Taishrin may think the assassin's like coming towards him, but is the assassin actually what happens later in the chapter when Perrin gets stabbed and Sari is the one to do it? So is that actually what the reading was referring to? See that's like the up in the air thing with it. Because if you think about it, I guess with that specific one, the assassin could be Sari killing Perrin. Uh, and then Opon also came in with it, and Opon heals Perrin later. So you have all three cards being used. So that could have been a prediction for Perrin and not Taishrin, and Taishrin's like misinterpreting it. Oh, that's cool. So he said people still theorize now on some of the later readings. I like that though because it gives us something to talk about, and it also like even after you finish the series, the fact that it's not fully clear. I'm assuming that people will probably ask Steven Erickson and Esselmont, and they probably still don't answer just for the fun of it, knowing how authors are. Um, but that's actually cool. I'll have to start like writing them down more in detail at the time because I didn't know like the significance of them. I'm like, are they going to be important? Is this going to be something we're going to use constantly, or is it just going to be like something that's like prevalent now and then not mentioned once we go away from Tattersall or something like that? So that's good to know. Yeah, sometimes a card signifies a person, or say the assassin card could just mean an assassination takes place. Yeah, that's what I kind of like. There's multiple readings of it, so it's better. I say it's better than an actual prophecy because then you actually prophecy will tell you events that happen per se, versus like the card it leaves it up to open interpretation. Like this, it can mean this, it can mean that. I think it's interesting. I'll have to start making predictions on them every time I see the card readings. I'll have to write them down and predict like, oh, I think this is gonna happen. I think that's gonna happen for it. But it's definitely interesting. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, basically we already mentioned it with Perrin getting killed, so we might as well go to it. He gets introduced to people in like the barracks area, and they send him off to the bar and to get introduced to the ninth. He gets introduced to Hedge, Mallet, and Trot. I think Trot's the barkeep basically though, but basically Perrin is just awkward. He doesn't know anything, and he has that like noble attitude, and he thinks he's like the perfect soldier, and he'll do things. And so like even when he's like talking to them in the bar, he's like they could tell like he's dumb the way he acts like around them. He doesn't understand certain things, and like the whole bar like gets quiet, doesn't laugh at like what he's saying, and he's just like an awkward dude. I feel like for the whole time, basically he does that, talks to them, he learns a bit, and they're like, oh yeah, you got to meet with Whiskey Jack. Um, there's no more readings in book one. Okay, that's good to know. I'll have to like go back and read them then to see if there's anything else that can be pulled out of it. Yeah, he meets the soldiers playing cards. That's basically it. And then they like tell him about Whiskey Jack, and then he basically like goes out into the alleyway, and this is where he gets he gets shanked by Sari, and I believe Sari is also with Kotalian and Amanis at this time, and they basically kill him. He's dead, but he's not quite dead. So uh, the interesting part when that happened, though, they knew he was the spy. So basically, they're like talking over his dead body, and they're saying like, "Oh, like we knew Lysine was targeting us and trying to figure out like someone sending someone to us." I think I put it on page 116 here. Let me just pull it up. But they knew he was the spy, and they're trying to like pull out the adjunct and get more people to like come, which is why they murder him. Let's see. 2 years ago. Yeah. Don't get distracted, Amonis. Lysine remains our target in the collapse of the Empire. She ruled but never earned. I have always supreme confidence in you. And then also, um, as we learned that they were just trying to pull out Lorne. So they're like, so this is the man Lorne sent to find you. So they know everything going on. They're trying to pull out Lorne and Lysine, and they're trying to get more like people, which is why they killed Perrin. And then when Perrin's like fading away, we hear the whirring of a coin spinning in his head, endlessly spinning. And so we see Opon's presence come into play. Uh, and that's where it goes into the end of the chapter. Better be because I earned it, otherwise I will be severely disappointed. Oh yeah, so I'll just read off what you said. So he says, "But I'll tell you something, all of you. If I die with a knife in my back, it better be because I earned it. Otherwise, I will be severely disappointed." Is that for Perrin or for? Let me see. Oh yeah, that's what Perrin says in the bar. You're right. What? Yeah, I guess he technically died with like a knife in his chest, not his back. So he didn't worry about that. Uh, yeah, it was for Perrin. Yeah, he dies with the knife in his chest. Technically, I guess they like stabbed him like twice. I think, in a certain way to make him one would be to bleed out, one to kill, to make sure he's gonna be dead no matter what. But he's just like a dummy. I don't know. I can't take his character serious at the moment, just because like I don't know. He's just like I said, he's a fool. He he has this viewpoint of how things should work, and he's been like a status in his life so far where he's never had to really do much, and he's had the ability to choose what he wants to do, and he chose to be a soldier when he really should have just chose to be a noble and not be in the situation. And then even like being too confident with like the adjunct and getting recruited into a scenario where he didn't need to be recruited, and so he just puts himself into situations with his arrogance basically. um but that is the end of chapter 3. We have Opon come in, and we'll see later with Opon what she does with Perrin. And we start with chapter 4. They finally, Tattersail, Whiskey Jack, and everyone else, Callum, Quick Ben, they're all meeting and they're talking about things with chapter 4. And I believe in this chapter is where uh, they basically they try to get Tattersail on their team, and with that they require Tattersail. Like Tattersail is not fully convinced, so they have to convince her, and then they tell her about Sorry and how they're like kind of thinking Sorry about her basically, because she's creepy and evil. And we learn as well that like there was a moment with Callum, who used to be an assassin for the Claw, um, and Sari was like torturing people and trying to get information out of them, and she was like, instead of just like killing them, she was like cutting them up, stabbing them, like, and just being like horrible to them. And like I think that's mostly Riga, not actually the Fisher girl. But she was like doing this to the mercenaries, and Callum just like put them out of their misery, and they like blessed him and everything because he did that, and he's an assassin. So it's like assassins aren't into torture. Want they kill. Their job is to kill, but they're quick about it. They don't torture people. So he was really like pissed off when he saw Sari doing that and wasn't into it at all. Um, so we learn about that. We also learn more about the Shadow Realm, the seven hounds of Shadow. We get introduced to one later. Gear is the one that we see specifically. Um, and basically, we also learn that Sari is suspecting like Hairlock is suspicious, and she doesn't fully trust him. Yes, good point. We also learn about the Shadow Warren and how it was previously occupied by the Tisti Adur, like you said, Daniel. Um, and so we basically like there's a lot of information thrown in here. Um, we learn a lot about the Shadow, what it was, the Seven Hounds, like the act of like the Shadow Throne, there's like multiple different factors coming in. Still trying to fully understand it. Um, Let me see if I could pull it up. There it is. House of Shadow. Yeah, Shadow Throne. Who's the king? Amonis, I guess. The rope, which is Cotelian, the assassin. Wix. Um, but we get more information about all of them and what they're doing, all their plans, and like sort of like how the Shadow Realm reopened at the when Lysine took over at the same time. And so I don't know if it's implied that Lysine was using the Shadow at the time, and that's why they want to get back at her because she betrayed them in some way, or what's going on. That's still not fully clear in my head. I'm sure we'll learn more about it as we go. Asim was the first sword of the Empire, was also said to be formally sworn to Hood and his Knight of Death until he renounced the title and swore vengeance on him when his daughter was kidnapped. Okay, Dasim, the first sword. See this this universe is so in depth. Honestly, I need to like this is why it's like good for rereads because I feel like they thought this thing through so much. Then their history is like amazing. That's one of the most impressive things so far is the history that they have. Because I mean, I've tried writing stuff myself and like building a history of a world. Yeah, you can do like here's like the general premise, but they have like battles, scenarios, battles between gods, like vengeance. This happened in this year. Everything's so in depth with them, and it's like basically it's its own world history, like for us. So it's going to be interesting as I piece that together more and more as we go. But it's one of the most intriguing parts. It's one of the harder parts to understand all the events that are occurring. But it's definitely worth it. And it's one thing I'm excited about as well in the future, being able to watch like lore videos once I finish the series and learn more that I didn't pick up on. That's one of my favorite things with like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and other series is watching like the. But let's see. Yeah, so they basically finish up their meeting, and when they're finishing up their meeting, Sale Fiddler senses like blood on a blade, and then the crew goes through a warren to follow the trail. And so I guess that's one of like Fiddler's abilities, I guess, is to sense blood, or sense like violence, I guess, in a way. And so they do that, and we cut back to Perrin. Perrin's alive again. Uh, he died. He was going to the gate of death or the warren of death, and basically, since he was technically the way they described it, correct me if I'm wrong. They said technically he was killed by a god, so it allowed for Opon and the twins to intervene. Uh, since he was not killed by another human or someone on the planet, he was killed by a god, which allowed for them to intervene if they wanted to, and that's why the sister decided to revive Perrin. But also at the same time, Perrin is gonna have someone close to him die, which he's like, no, don't revive me. I don't want them to die. And she's like, well, too bad. I don't care. Yeah, since he died to a god. And I mean, I guess it probably comes up to the decision of like whoever is doing that. So a god still has to intervene. So you could still die to a god and not be revived, is the way I'm interpreting it. Because if like it depends on another god to intervene. And we don't actually get to see Hood either. We see like talks to the twins about it. And this is like the point where Opon is obviously the seems like one of the main adversaries for the Shadow. So we have Opon as the adversary for the Shadow. Shadow is the adversary for Lysine. Bridge burners are also adversaries for like Tashrin and the Empire. And like there's so many things going on. Then you have like Moonspawn, who is like surviving on its own and is also an adversary. So there's a lot of conflict happening here. So it's hard to say who's good and bad. And we just have to take it from our perspective of the protagonists that they're good, I guess, in the eyes of like Opon. I guess that's the god that we would see as the good god, since the two were being supported directly with our like Tattersell and Perrin. But basically, Perrin, um, he is awake, but then he's also greeted by like hounds and shadow figures. The figures decide not to kill him again, from what I understand. Instead, they just say he will follow him to find out what the gods are meddling and what the coin is in his head. So basically, it sounds like the shadow decides to keep him alive again to just find out who's meddling with him because I guess they don't know it's Opon. And so they're like trying to figure out what exactly has happened. Another thing as well with Opon, we know that they're twins, one boy, one girl. I don't think it's coincidence that you see Tattersell, a girl, and then Perrin, a boy, as the two people that are being controlled by Opon. I think that's probably intentional in a way because it could have easily been another character, but those are the two, boy, girl, like the twins. Just a little thing there. I don't know what the significance of it is yet, but I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, he basically gets revived, and then he gets found by Tipper, and they heal him up. But he's like in this weird mental state where his memories are not all intact and his mind's not intact. So his body is like healed, but his mind is like still broken, and it's gonna be like that for a few days. They said. And then we see Whiskey Drac arrives, and he arrives at his location. I believe I'm not sure if it's Daru Gistan or the Pale that they're at. I think they were in the Pale. They're arriving at Daru Gistan, I believe. But he warns the guards. He's like, yeah, it's gonna be dangerous. Just like survive, do your own thing. Don't worry about like protecting us and doing your job. Just worry about surviving. Something's gonna happen. And let's see. Parent baits Shadow Throne by saying that someone else intervened. Okay, so it was Perrin that said someone intervened. Yeah, you're right. And I guess that like got him to like live again because otherwise they probably would have just like killed him again, I would assume. But since he said someone intervened, they want to kind of like investigate it, which they do, and we see later in the chapter where that happens. Let's see. We also, as well with the cards, um, we see like some of our cards predicted a clash between High House of Shadow and the Knight. Um, I don't know what that means exactly yet, but we do see her cards predicted a clash. So I'm wondering if that's going to happen at Dargistan or that's a later thing that might happen. Yeah, honestly. I mean, it's smart by him. It's one of the better things he said, but at the same time, I think he probably, I don't know if it was like a smart move by Perrin or if it's just luck. Like you said, because I guess it's the ability with Opon is like sort of like luck. And so he got lucky enough to mention it. The Night of the Dark, yeah. So House of the Shadow, I believe it was, and Night of the Dark. Yeah, House of the Shadow and the Night of the Dark are gonna have a clash. So I don't know if that's a clash that's gonna happen soon. I don't think it's. Hmm. I'll have to like look into more of that because there is a clash that happens with Gear later, but Night of the Dark, I don't think we've been introduced to anything specific with that. Um, for it, that's interesting. So basically, Sale was continuing to predict stuff, and she ended up seeing the Hound, and Quick Ben then shows up, uh, and for some reason his warrants smell spicy. They point that out, and she's told that Hairlock is coming, and he's basically being chased by Gear, and Gear's like following him through because I guess he went into the shadow Warren and he went too far, and he kept going because he's nosy and he wanted to do that, and basically they kept forcing him to go, and Hairlock thinks he's also arrogant like Perrin, but not in a different way. He's like arrogant in his abilities, and he has abilities, so it's fine. Versus Perrin is just like a dummy. Um, but yeah, Hairlock is on the run. We also see Whiskey is talking to Fiddler, and they're talking about how strong Sail is. We learned that Sail actually got offered to be a high mage multiple times, and she's turned it down and refused. And so they think like Sail could actually stand up to Taishrin if she needed to. Uh, we also learn Dujek shows up, and we find out that the ninth killed Perrin, or sorry, he thinks the ninth killed Perrin, but it was really, as we know, it's Sorry, and the Shadow. And he basically shows up and he's talking to Whiskey Jack and everyone, and he's talking about how they have like one more mission about for the Pale and Dujistan. I'm probably saying that city name wrong. But he says the plan is like really bad, and Whiskey says the plan is doing exactly what it was intended to do: get the bridge burners killed, basically. Instead of really denying it, Dujek tells him if he survives, he can walk away and be a deserter, but he's not going to have any punishment, essentially, but only for which enforces how the Empire really just wants to get rid of the bridge burners and get rid of Whiskey Jack, because Whiskey Jack was there, I guess, when Lysine took over, and he knows more than most people when it comes to that. And it's basically like just confirming some of the previous info with that little scene that we had. We then go back to let me see. Oh, let me see your comment. I think the Mason of High House Death is Fiddler. Okay. Or Whiskey Jack, since they mentioned just after the readings they both used to be stonecutters. Okay. You're right, they do mention the stonecutter thing. I remember that between both of them. Um some Mason High House of Death. Okay. I guess we'll learn about that later. We'll have to see what they say. Uh, let's see. Yeah, and so once more they have the conversation. They learn about Hairlock running through the Shadow Gate, or the Shadow Warren, and he went beyond the Shadow Gate, and the hounds are on his trail now. Callum and Sel are worried about releasing a hound, which are more dangerous than the Shadow Realm itself, apparently. That's something they said, that the hounds are like extremely dangerous and they don't want to release one. And so we'll see how they do that exactly, how they prevent that. They obviously have one that's like out there, but I don't know what they term as release per se, because I don't know the restrictions on the hounds. If the hounds like, I know they say like the warren's closed if the person using it dies, but is the hound someone that can use the warren, or is it like a being from the warren and present because of that? Or if they mean the hound being released is like the hound's separate from them and can come whenever they want. I don't know exactly. Uh, Basically, and then Tattersall and the others find out about Perrin being alive. Another good quote that they had, that I wrote down here, it was, "Shock is the scar that bridges the gap between body and mind." I'd like that one. Is a pretty cool quote that he had. Once more, it shows like some of the brilliance with the dialogue and the prose that he has, and the way he describes certain things. For example, in the last chapter, I believe I wrote it down. Yeah, we'll get to it later, but there's like a description he uses to set the scene, before the conflict when he's introducing gear, and I really liked his description there, and I'll read it when we get to it. So yeah, they find out Perrin is awake, his mind's not in the right place, and won't be fixed for a few days. Uh, Tattersall basically is the one that's caring for him, and so Perrin's staying for him, and at this point it's guaranteed that like Sorry is with the Shadow. Like there's not really any doubt anymore that we know Sorry is like one of the people working for the Shadow. And so we also learn about the Moranth being a new species. I guess we had the Moranth corals from before, so it's not fully new, but they mention it again. Um, and we also get the story once more about Callum saving the tortured mercenaries. We get introduced to Gear. And then here we go. It's on page 150. This is like where we start the viewpoint from Gear. I just wanted to read it because it's a really good description. It says, I'll just read the first paragraph. Two muted thunderclaps sounded in the city as the east spread its crimson cloak skyward. The first report followed scant minutes later by the second. The last of night's tear churned down gunnels and swirled along street gutters. Muddy puddles filled potholes, reflecting the thinning clouds overhead with an opaque cast. Among the narrow crooked alleys of Pale's Krail Quarter, the chill and damp night clung to dark spaces with tenacity. Here the mold-laden bricks and worn cobbles had swallowed the second thunderclap, leaving no echo to challenge the patter of the water droplets. That's like a really good description. Okay. And then Daniel was pointing out one of his favorite quotes. He said, um, through the woman had been with the squad for 2 years. Still, his men called her recruit, and they probably would do so until the day they died. There was meaning. And Whiskey Jack understands it well. Recruits were not bridge burners. Okay. So as long as she's a recruit, she's not a bridge burner. I remember them saying that. And part of them like looking at recruit and being scared of recruit is like with that is they don't want to give her a name because if they give her a name, she's part of the bridge burners and they don't like her right now because she's too creepy. And that's where like Callum's like, yeah, she was like torturing these dudes for fun and she like kills people constantly. So that's why they keep calling her recruit, basically, so that she's not an official bridge burner, which makes sense. But we basically go from that. The Hound is like tracking Hairlock. He kills four guards, um, and then we cut to Hairlock meeting with Sale, and basically he's like, "Oh, I got away from the Hounds. They're all idiots. They're nothing to me." And then obviously he's the idiot because he like didn't really get away from them at all. Um, and then we also then at this point when they're like talking, this is when the Hounds show up, and Tattersall can sense it, and at first, Hairlog doesn't fight back against the Hounds, and he's like, "Oh, take care of them," and he hides in his little box. And then when Tattersall's not able to beat the Hounds, Hairlock starts to fight back. And when Hairlock's fighting back, he at one point tries to do like a soul shift with the Hounds. It sounds like. Um, so basically, he was trying to take over the Hound's body, but then Tattersall warns the Hound and like prevents Hairlock from doing it. So is that I'm assuming she warns the Hound about the soul shift because if Hairlock takes over the Hound's body, then Hairlock's gonna be like even stronger, and she's worried about Hairlock because she doesn't trust him. Yeah, Tattersall uses light magic. Yeah, I believe so. I believe Opon is like the House of Light, so I think that's where it comes into play. When I was looking at the gods and everything, so I think Opon is House of Light. Let me just double check, or maybe not. Actually, no, Opon isn't House of Light, I don't think. Opon is unaligned. Never mind. Yeah, Opon's unaligned. But yeah, she basically protects the Hound, which was interesting. So I wonder if that's going to come into play later with her taking care or her like going against Hairlock at one point because she obviously doesn't trust him and doesn't want him to like take over and do those things. But then we see after that, um, Perrin comes out of the room with his like dumb luck. He pulls out his sword and he stabs the Hound, which people are like mystified at because normal weapons can't break through the Hound. But we learned that like it's because of like the dumb luck he has from Opon and the blessing from Opon, basically. Yeah, Opon's a neutral party. Yep. Um. Yeah. So yeah, Opon's doing their own thing. I don't know what exact. We'll find out more about their plan. But he basically, um, he comes through. He stabs the Hound. The Hound runs away and is able to escape. And that's basically where the chapter ends. And I think it actually ends with the coin spinning um, in his head. Yeah. So it says she frowned, trying to concentrate. Then she smiled. A spinning coin. I hear a spinning coin. So the two of them are tied, like Opon, male and female. That's basically the end of that. And it goes to next is book two, Daru Beastron. And so we'll see what happens with that exactly. I know there's still like the mission that they have to take care of in about the pail that they were describing. And so let me see. Herlock thinks Opon interfered here with him being stopped and Perrin being able to stab it. Yeah, he definitely interfered. um, it makes sense. I think I agree with that. Um, 1 second. I have a cat that wants to leave the room. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. So yeah, Opon interfered, and let me see. So book two will introduce us to the characters of Darugistan. Okay, that's cool to see. For that, I know it's gonna build up more in terms of like theories and stuff. I don't have much at the moment to go on. I feel like I need more stuff to grab on before I can like really predict anything that's gonna happen. I think it's still just like setting the ground right now. And it does a good job at setting the ground. And basically, we'll see what happens. It's interesting. One of the things I like the most so far. We're talking about like the things I like the most, things I don't like the most in terms of what we read. I really like a lot of it overall. I was kind of upset that I had to stop reading it to do the book club because I blew through it, and by Wednesday I was done with the chapters, and I'm like, oh, I want to read more. So that's the best thing about finishing this today is I could go back and read more and finally continue. But uh, knowing like the shadow, like said before, is one of the most interesting things. I've always like gravitated sort of towards like shadow realms and shadow gods and things like that when I'm doing my fantasy. Like one of the D&D campaigns I played, I am a shadow sorcerer, and so I'm always interested when it comes to shadow stuff in general with shadow gods. And so I think that's probably going to end up being like my favorite Warren. We'll see if that develops and how that works going forward, but that's what I'm leaning towards, and I'm really interested in finding out more about with Amonis and Coteleon. Um, but overall, I really like it so far. I like Sel, I like Perrin, even though he's an idiot. The humor in the series is actually good. I actually like chuckled a few times at the things that were happening. I didn't expect that kind of humor coming from this book, dark fantasy, but it was actually good to see. Yeah, the first section just gives information that you can't really connect. Yeah, first section gives a lot. Would recommend doing larger sections just for this book, but maybe not considering how long just talking about the section took. Yeah, that's the only thing. I don't like know if I want to be doing the stream for like 4 hours at once. Um, so I think I'll stick to like the schedule we have now. For like the future books, we'll have to see, but I feel like this is going to be a little heavier in terms of information on the beginning, anyways, because we're trying to like learn more. Once we start learning more about like the houses and the gods and things like that, it'll be easier for me to compartmentalize and we can like really dive into it. Right now, it's just like collecting all the information I can and trying to understand it fully when it comes to that. In terms of like the plot, I think it's pretty like understandable with like Tattersall and Tashrin and Perrin, like how everything's factoring in with the bridge burners going against Tashrin. That's like the main thing right now. Um, but like plot wise, that's where it's at. But overall, um, in terms of like structure and everything, it's definitely a setup book for future ones. But I like where it went so far. Like I don't really have any major complaints to be quite honest. Like there are a few moments that um that are harder to understand because you don't know the scenarios going on. Like my least favorite part was probably like the prologue, for example, because I didn't know what was happening and the significance of it all. But like there's definitely a lot of positives, and I like the glimpses of prose that pop in with the first book, and especially like the first chapter and some of the quotes at the end, where you see the strong prose and dialogue from Steven Erikson. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about to see going forward and in the future books as well, is like how his prose and dialogue develops, because I've heard quotes from later books, from like people who were doing like should you read videos, and like some of the quotes are like amazing, and people, the way people talk about like the connection they get to the characters makes me really excited for the future. The hard part with Malazan specifically is that you only really know three characters from Gardens of the Moon and Deadhouse Gates, and you are introduced to a new continent. Yeah, that's what I heard as well. Like you jump back and forth from what I understand, with the different books, and I don't know exactly what goes to what in terms of like if we're gonna go back to Gardens of the Moon, like that area and that continent, or what's happening. But it's definitely a lot. I feel like we're not gonna get the true picture until we're like fully through the series for that. And I think that's what a lot of people like say is like tough about Gardens of the Moon. Like I know a lot of people say Gardens of the Moon is like the worst book. Not that it's bad, They say it's like the toughest one to like get into and read. But the fact that this is like the worst book in the series per se, but it's still like extremely enjoyable is like a great sign because I thoroughly enjoy everything that's being set up so far. So, book five introduces one more continent, and you only know one character. And then book three is in Genabacchus. I know they mentioned Genabacchus a few times. Um, that'll be interesting to see. I've heard good things about the other books. The whole realm and everything going on in the world is hard for me to grasp at the moment. It's not something I'm like weak in when it comes to like fantasy is like understanding the cities and locations. Like locations are like a name to me, so I've really been trying to like look at the map and see. But even then, like when they mention like Utna or Unta, and I'm like, where's this on the map? I can't find this. And then they have the map of like Darugistan, so that'll be a little easier when we're in the city and we get like a actual like description of everything going on, and we'll be able to understand it. Great sign you'll love the series if you enjoy Gardening. Yeah, I'm really liking it right now. Like I said before, like my I didn't like I had to wait like a few days to pick it up. I'm a very slow reader. Like I read like 20 to 30 pages in an hour depending like what type of book it is. So it's partly why I didn't want to go too fast through the series because it'd be hard for me just to keep up. Um, but I think our pace right now is about 150 pages a section. So I'll continue with that at the moment, and then we'll see what it is for future books. Map doesn't really have any spoilers on it. That's good to know. I need to like get used to the map though, and like learn locations and like where they're at. Okay, that's what the fans have come up with at the moment. Yeah, yeah, I'll have to learn more about it, but overall though, it's pretty great. Um, so far, a good start to it. It was interesting. There's enough intrigue with the world and the gods and everything to like have me continue. I'm not hating it. That I guess that's one of the worries when you're doing like a read along is you're like, what if I end up hating the first book and I don't want to continue? But I really enjoy it right now. So we'll have to see where it goes and like how the other subsections are. In terms of like future plans, so we'll meet back up next Saturday again to discuss. Okay, you sent a link. Yeah, it's not showing me the link right now. Let me see if it shows on my computer because I'm looking on my phone. Let me check this real quick. My computer's to the side, so sorry. Or it might be in the Discord, actually. I'll have to pull it up later because I'm still getting my technology figured out right now since it's the first stream. So like my Discord is on my I have a laptop that I'm running off right now, and I have my other computer. So I need to log in on Discord on here, but I don't have a login ready. So I'll have to pull that up later. But I'll take a look at it for sure and let you know in the Discord what it says. Still trying to figure it out. But no, overall it's great though so far. Um don't really have any complaints. We'll pick up with subsection sub book 2 and 3 for the next part and we'll cover it from there. It's about another 150 pages. We'll do about the same thing. We'll like try to summarize each part. I'll start incorporating like the Discord more, and we can even do voice chats. For the first one, I just wanted to like set up the stream and see how it works. But we can start like doing a voice chat as well with the Discord and like throwing people in there, um, and getting some questions and everything going. For that, Jensen in Discord. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll have to check that out later. I don't have the Discord up at the moment. I apologize about that. But I'll get it set up in the future. I just didn't know. This is the first time for me running a live stream. But yeah, we'll incorporate the Discord more and we'll do like a voice chat for it as well going forward. A rundown of what you consider to be spoilers, since that's different for everyone. Maybe put it in Discord or something. Okay. Spoilers. So like for spoilers per se, um, if it's like an obvious plot spoiler, we don't want any of those. If like a character death, we don't need that as well. I'm fine with like descriptions of magic systems and certain like background information. Like if it's something in the past that's explained, um, then that's totally fine. You can totally do it. If it's like something that's explained later in the books, you can always just say like, "Oh, it's explained later. You'll understand later." I prefer like someone saying you'll understand later. But if it's something that's not fully explained later and it's something you should have picked on from like the history of the world, then definitely go ahead and explain it to me if it's a history of the world thing. In terms of like races and things I get wrong, definitely correct me on all that. But like in terms of like theories and everything, don't correct me if I'm completely wrong. And then also for any like spoilers, like I mentioned before, if it's a future thing that gets explained, if it's explained like thoroughly, then you could just be like, it'll be explained later. But if it's not explained thoroughly, then feel free to like fill me in if that makes sense. I'll try to be more specific on it, and I'll put rules in it in the Discord as well to avoid that, so that it doesn't like run up. But like definitely no plot spoilers or character spoilers. And I think I don't really consider like logic and magic system spoilers though if they're explained, unless it's like aspect that we don't know about yet. But yeah, that's basically it for our. Did you guys have any like questions for me though of like any sections that you wanted to talk about before we cut it off for today? Um, if not, we could always cut it off and pick it up next time, and we'll do voice chat and do other things as well. I just wanted to kind of like get this one going and see how it goes. But if you guys have any questions, I'll stick here for a few minutes and we'll see if anything comes in um, for that. Yeah, hopefully we get more people in the future, like you said. I don't know. It'd be tough for that, but we'll see. Hopefully they come in and people pick up on it and they enjoy it. It'd definitely be fun if we had more people. Any favorite characters yet? Um, so favorite characters so far, it's hard to say. Like in terms of like intrigue, definitely like Amanis, Kotalin, and Sari, like for the Shadow Realm. That's definitely something I'm really interested in. Finding out more is just like what their whole purpose is with the hounds and everything else. I'm very intrigued by that. So they're kind of my favorites. Animander Rake is cool. I want to learn more about him. In terms of like the characters we follow, I don't have a favorite per se at the moment, because I'm still trying to get to used to them and learn like their personalities. So we'll have to like see how that goes. But like in terms of intrigue, my favorites are like Animander Rake, Kotalin, Amonis, and Sari. How do you feel about the point of view switches, as that is something that is often criticized in book one? It doesn't really bother me because I've read a lot of fantasy prior, like Wheel of Time and stuff like that, where Wheel of Time has multiple point of views throughout. Um, so it's not really a thing that bothers me. Sometimes it may take a second to like pick up on who's talking, but I'm fine with it. I think it plays into like the scenes very well, and I think that's part of like where people say it's a what's it called, like a screenplay beforehand. You could tell it's a screenplay because in normal like movies they don't stick with one point of view the whole time through and then go to a different one. They cut from scene to scene, so you could definitely see how that is. It doesn't bother me at all though. I'm used to reading multiple point of views. Since it could be quite abrupt and sometimes you are not 100% sure at the start who the character is. Yeah, for the point of view changes. Like you said, yeah. Uh, there was a few times it like was annoying. I think one moment I remember on the ship in I believe it was chapter 3 with Perrin. There was a point where like Lorne came in and they were like giving the commander like they're just like, Captain, you have a mission, Captain. You have to do this, Captain. And I'm like, who's this Captain they're talking about? Because they never mentioned Perrin's name. I picked up on later that she was talking to Perrin. 450 total point of view characters with books like Crippled God having 151. Yeah. Dang, that's crazy. I didn't really notice it right now, but I guess it is because you have like Gear, Tattersail, um, Perrin, and then I'm trying to think who else. Sorry, technically. Um, no, I don't think there's really a series comparable as well either. Just from like my quick like experience right now, I think the history like and the thoroughness of the world is just insane. Because even like with things like Wheel of Time, it's like there is a history there, but they don't have like distinct battles. It's not as in depth, and they don't have like as many like specific years. Like this is like a history that's like in an actual like history textbook because they have like all the years and different things. Book six onward is when the point of view gets massive in terms of point of view count. Okay. Yeah, because I didn't notice that. There's like four or five, I think, so far. Um, Maybe that's something to take note of in the future. But in terms of like point of view count, like that'll be interesting going on forward if it's confusing or not. I think it'll be good though. I don't think it'll be something that I'll like struggle with per se. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's not a problem at the moment. But if it comes up, I'll definitely mention it because we're gonna mention all the pros and cons that come up. There's just not really any cons, so there's not much to discuss in terms of like, oh, I didn't like that they did that because I'm really with all the decisions made at the moment. The first five books can be pretty standalone. That's good to know. And it's always interesting. Like, do people recommend reading chronologically in terms of when they're published? Or is there like a specific reading order online? Like, this is the reading order you should do if you want to do these years in a row. We're going to do chronological for publish for the sake of this, but like, if I were to recommend it to someone, would I recommend they pick up on this first and that? Though they all assume knowledge of previous books, though, some have been fine with starting at books too. I hear that a lot when I was getting into like the series. There was a lot of people that were like, "Oh, just start with like book 2 because book 1's not good." People would say that. I don't think book 1's bad. Like I really enjoy it so far. I think people are just like overcritical, and I think especially with people who don't read like epic fantasy, they're not used to like bringing in that amount of information. I kind of always have like a go with the flow attitude towards it. So this is new for me taking notes. I usually don't take notes at all on books. I just like go with the flow, get the beats and the plot points, and then usually on further read throughs is when I get more in depth. It's recommended to do publishing order, but there are a few books you can switch around the placements of. I would just stick to publishing. Okay. Yeah, we'll stick to publishing. Like, and I'm always curious. We'll probably do publishing through, but like doing the Esselmont novels later. We'll see like how those are as well. Do you, in terms of like the Esselmont ones, do you guys know if they stand up to like the same praise as the Erickson books, or are they like kind of like not as highly regarded, or are they like alternate stuff? I don't really know much about the Esselmont books. You don't really have to decide to read Esselmont until after book 5. Okay, Esselmont's after book 5. So I'm assuming it's like future stuff and side stuff. I think I don't know, I might save Esselmont for the future. We'll see how it goes. But I'm enjoying what it is right now. I'm excited about it. Overall, though, it's really a good start to the series and happy to go through the rest of it. But yeah, this was a good book club for the first episode, though. We'll definitely pick up next week at the same time. I'm gonna involve Discord more. We'll see how it goes. I'm trying to figure out exactly how that works technology wise. Like I mentioned before, because if I bring you guys into voice chat, how is it gonna play out on the thing? So I'll have to test it out on the background first to see how that works. And how it like interferes with stream. That's the only thing I'm worried about. It was like enough technology wise to figure out how the stream runs in the first place. Stick to publishing. Really depends on the person. Some like them less, while some think he's equally as good. Okay. I guess we'll have to figure that out in the future. But yeah, overall, thank you all for watching though on the first episode. It was fun. I enjoyed talking about it. We talked for a long time. Um, SML has different styles, and I think Atmosphere is a lot better than Erickson. Okay, that's something good to take note of. We'll definitely have to see how it ties in. But yeah, thank you all for watching though. We'll go ahead and close up here. Um, like I said, we'll pick back up next week at the same time. It was fun though. I really appreciate you guys in the chat here. A lot of insight, really helping me understand the world more. And it also helps because I could take notes better on certain things as well going forward. So we'll read the next two sub books, and we'll have sort of similar format for that, and then we'll pick up on it next time. But hopefully we get some views and we get a few more people coming in to the chat next time. But overall, thank you all for watching. Really appreciate y'all's time, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye. You'll still see me because I have to turn it off.